Hey, everybody. Hey, Pierre. Hi, Susan. Pierre, what's happening?
What's happening? Just a nice heat wave in Winnipeg in September. It's a fantastic thing. How about you guys?
Same. It's like 83 today. It feels like summer
It's the
still.
best September ever, like I said the other day. I'm still saying it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every day that it stays warm is one less day of winter, is the way I look at it. So that's
100%. We're on the same wavelength, brother. Oh yeah, yeah.
awesome.
Same wavelength with us as well.
Yeah.
And Elliot, remind me where you are.
Chicago.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah. So you're not far. Yep.
Yeah, and the flowers still look fresh and the leaves haven't turned. And so yeah, it's like the
Yep.
extension of summer. It's great. And the weather is in the 70s and in the 50s at night. It's perfect.
Yep. Yep.
I'm
And
in California.
oh, yeah.
So
How are things
so you
there?
want to know about the weather? Actually, next week it's supposed to be 90 again.
Yeah, that's warm. So I'm in Minneapolis. Pierre's in Winnipeg. Landon, where are you located?
I'm out in Buffalo, New York.
Okay. What's the weather
South
like?
Canada, as I sometimes call it out here. Just below the border there. It's pretty nice. Sunny and 70. A little bit of rain, but we'll take what we can get because we get nailed every winter here, so, especially in the
Yeah,
South towns where I'm at.
awesome. And then also, is it Vaux? Vox?
It's Vo. It's
Vo. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
Welcome.
right. Yeah. I'm in Rhode Island and it's beautiful here. It's like 70 and a little rainy, but it's still warm, so that's good.
Nice nice fall day. That's good. That's
Oh,
awesome. Well, welcome. Hey, Natalie.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Natalie, remind me where you're located.
UK, so it's 1 a.m. at the moment.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks for staying up late.
hardcore.
I'm very enthusiastic. I'm excited.
Awesome. And Kevin, good to see
Happy
you.
to
How are things in Nashville? Almost there. Things are good. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get
They're good.
started.
They're
I
good,
see.
Chad. They're good. They're good. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. So it looks like we have Heather. We have somebody that says box two. We have Billy's here. Amaria's here. Um, Deepika. Hopefully, I'm saying that name right, but welcome to this workshop. So tonight we're going to be jumping in and talking about writing songs for beginners. So really kind of going down to the fundamentals of what is songwriting, what makes a song, and how can you start thinking about or continue thinking about songwriting in general. So I wanted to share just kind of my thoughts and give you an idea of how I think about things, and hopefully it will be helpful for you as well. And for some of you who have been, following at-home songwriting for a while, this might be a little more foundational, but I think it's always good to go back and review as well. If you find any value in this, I do have a buy me a coffee link. So I do accept tips, no pressure, no obligation. But if you do find value, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/at-home songwriting. Anything's appreciated. So just throwing that out there. So what I want you to get from this tonight is a basic understanding of songwriting. So really taking it down to what makes a song and learning what are the elements of a song. And then I want you to leave hopefully inspired to either start writing or getting deeper into your own writing. So those are kind of the main goals for this evening. So starting off, what is a song? So a song is really words that are set to music or words that are meant to be sung. So songwriters are interesting because we're not poets and we're not composers necessarily. We're kind of this mixture of both, where writing a song is really the art of setting words to music. So some people, they may write lyrics and they're not a musician, which is totally fine. And then there's also people who are musicians who don't write lyrics, but a song itself is really that combination and that marriage of words and music. So there's a few myths about songwriting that I wanted to talk about as well, because I think when you start jumping in, you hear a lot of different people saying a lot of different things. One of the myths is that you need formal training. And this probably sounds funny coming from me because I have a songwriting coaching business and I teach for Berklee. But the reality is you don't need formal training to start writing songs. And in fact, when I started writing, I really didn't have any formal training. I just kind of jumped in and imitated the songs that I liked and really just kind of was self-taught. So if you don't have the, I guess, the ability to take training, if you don't have the patience to take training, you don't necessarily have to. But I think songwriting is an apprentice type of an art where you don't need to have other people to help you. But I think if you can learn from other people who have tried and made mistakes and learn from it, it can help you move a little bit faster. Another myth that I hear people say is that certain people are magically gifted or born with it, which is completely not true. None of us come out of the womb being able to write songs. Not even your favorite songwriters just magically plopped out and they just had it. They developed it over time with whatever resources and things that they had. So don't fall into the trap of people telling you only certain people can write really good songs. Also, songs don't have to be complicated to be good. That's another myth about songwriting is, people will say, well, if you want to, write better songs, you need fancier words, or you need more complicated chord progressions, or you need complicated rhythms. And that's not true. Songs don't have to be complicated to be good. And we'll talk about what a song really does. And I think it'll put it into perspective what it means to have a good song. So also, there's no right way to write. So there's a lot of people who will give you different ways that they might write, or there's different options to write a song, but there's really no perfect way. There's no right way to do it. And I would encourage you to try different ways and not get yourself into one way of doing it, because sometimes you may start with one part of a song and then move into another. And then sometimes inspiration strikes in different places. And hopefully you don't have to wait for inspiration to strike. We can talk about ways to come up with ideas and how you can sort of beat the dreaded writer's block as well. Also, another myth is people say you can't teach songwriting, which is something that I do as I teach songwriting. So I see people learn and people grow all the time. And I think that's what's exciting for me is that songwriting is a craft. And like any craft, you can get better and you can improve. And you can also learn from others. So I think that's something to not fall into the trap of as well. So now let's jump in and talk about what songs are. So in my mind, songs are simply communication. Sometimes when we're writing songs, we get into our own heads and we think that we have to write just the right words, or we have to have just this magical phrase, or somehow there's just the right way to say something that is just going to make the song special, right? And what really makes songs special is how they communicate. So if you think about communication, a song is really the singer telling the listener something. So it's a communication between the singer and the listener. So songs really communicate they can communicate really three things that are really the most important. And those are communicating emotions, they can communicate ideas, and then they can also communicate stories. So when we talk about emotions, that is, what is the listener feeling when they hear it? There's some songs that it will put you in a good mood. There's some songs that will make you cry. There are some songs that will make you angry. Um, Sometimes songs are literally telling a story. They're really going from point A to point B to point C and just taking us through a situation. And then other times, songs are communicating ideas. So as a writer, your job is to think, how do I best communicate? And you really have four major elements to communicate. And what makes up a song are the lyrics, the melody, the chords or the harmony, and then the underlying groove. So those four elements work together to come together to communicate and give an emotional experience. So again, the elements, lyrics, melody, chords, rhythm, and groove. So when we're thinking about all of those elements working together, the way that they communicate and how they come together for a sum of the parts, that concept is called prosody. So prosody is this concept of how does the structure of your song support or amplify the emotion. So sometimes your lyrics will be telling a story, but the music is really telling the emotion of it, right? So your lyrics are for your logic, for your brain, and the music is what speaks to the heart. So a lot of times music can tell us things and make us feel things without ever a word being spoken, right? So I want you to not underestimate the power of the music, because sometimes we can get caught up in really trying to write something very deep melodic or lyrically, and we forget that it's the combination of the lyrics and the melody and the chords, that prosody, which creates that experience. Um, so I just covered quite a bit of stuff. Are there any questions at this point? And you can put questions in the chat, or you can raise your hand as well.
Yeah. Or me, okay.
Yeah,
I,
Dominique, right? Or
yeah,
Dominique?
right. You had mentioned a couple days ago at the other class that there is a difference between poetry and lyric writing. And I've been thinking about that, and I talked to another songwriter who agreed, but I still don't really quite understand. Can you
Yeah.
explain or kind of break it down, the difference between the poet, which has rhythm and cadence,
Yep.
how to, or what's the difference? And how do you break down then the poetry into lyrics?
Great question. So poetry is meant to be read or recited either aloud or read silently, right? So the person who is reading it has control over how it's read. So you can have control over how you change the tone of your voice. You can have the power to change um, how it is expressed. And then also when you're reading silently, you have the ability to sort of look forward and backward, and you have the ability to experience the work with your eyes and your mind. Whereas like lyrics are similar to poetry, where there's rhythm, there's words, there's grammar, those types of things. But the difference between lyrics and poetry is lyrics are meant to be sung, and lyrics are meant to be to set to a melody. So that means there's different rhythmic considerations with lyrics. There's also a different structure within songs. So poetry can kind of be anything that the writer imagines, anything that they want. Songs can too, but songs that are effective fit a certain structure. So you actually have song sections, like you have verses, you have choruses, you have bridges. All of those have their own function and they have their own job to do. Whereas poetry is not quite as structured. Lyrics are much more structured. There's a different use of repetition. There's a different use of just the natural patterns of the speech. So while poetry and lyrics are similar, they're definitely doing different jobs. And a poem doesn't always make a good song. And a song kind of, or lyrics, I should say, is kind of like a poem, but poetry doesn't always transfer over to a song very well, just because there's not a lot of structure sometimes. Does that make sense?
It does, and as you were speaking, I'm thinking, poetry does have a lot of structure. There's different types of poems, but I do really see your point about trying to make a poem into lyrics, because even though both have structures, the structures are different.
And sometimes the structure's the same, right? So you have certain, like couplets. Couplets in lyrics work kind of the same as couplets in poetry. Common meter is the same between poetry and lyrics as well. But when you're writing a song, or when you're writing poetry, you don't have to worry about the melody. Whereas when you're writing lyrics, you should be thinking about how does it melodically sing.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because the other songwriter that I spoke with, she said she does it backwards. She says that she writes the lyrics first and then the melody comes later. And so I get, and you had mentioned that before, that you do it the opposite way, but there's many ways to do it. And, there is no right or wrong way.
For sure.
So it's interesting to me to hear all of this stuff and then trying to find my way, navigate my way through here and, just to see if I can do it.
Well, I know you can do it. It just takes time.
Can I
Great
ask a
question.
question here? Just follow-up question there?
Yeah, for sure.
So you said that so the lyrics are inevitably tied to a melody. And so you have to think about that when you're writing the lyrics. And my question is, of those four elements that you described earlier, how would you change that sentence if you were talking about chords in the lyrics? Would you have to have the chords first, or do chords come after lyrics? What's your experience there?
Nope. So if you look at this diagram, you could write a song from any of those things first, right? So you might have a groove, you might have a chord progression, and then your job is to come up with lyrics and melody, right? If you come up with just a melody, then you need to find out, well, what are the chords? How do I set that to a groove? What are the lyrics? So songs will come in different chunks, but to make a complete song, you would have some combination of those elements. And some writers, like in the last meeting, we watched a video with Billy Joel, and Billy Joel said he always starts with the music first. So he has chords and a melody, and then he writes the lyrics to what those inspire for him. As Dominique said, she has a friend who writes lyrics first and then sets them to melody and chords. For me personally, if I write lyrics first, I find that my songs aren't as strong because they don't have as strong of a melody. But when we're talking about lyrics, and this is a little bit ahead of some of the things that I'm going to talk about, but melody is just rhythm and pitch. So there's really two things that make a melody. It's rhythm, which lyrics have their own rhythm, right? Words have a syllable pattern, they have a structure. And then what we do with that rhythm is we assign pitches to the rhythm. So melody just becomes rhythm that has pitches assigned to it, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
I
welcome.
have a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Susan.
So what do you mean by groove?
So groove is just the style and sort of the feel that the song has, right? Like, is it a ballad? Is it a shuffle? Is it like four on the floor, like dance beat?
Oh, okay.
You know, so what is the rhythm that you're playing the chords? Like, are you just holding one chord and you're just letting it ring, or are you playing a chord pattern like that? That's the groove. So the groove is the style or the feel.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So the next thing is, within songs, especially if you're writing lyrics first, but even if you're writing lyrics after you have music, one of the things that comes up a lot when I'm working with newer songwriters is, where do I find ideas? So what do I write about? That's the big question, right? So a lot of times songs are about a lot of different things, and you can literally write a song about anything. So I want you to just remember, just because other songs maybe don't talk about something you want to write about doesn't mean that you can't write about it. So songs can be about anything, but where do you find ideas? So one is personal experience, right? So if you have personal experiences that you're going through, like, keep a journal, write down like things that people in your life say, things that you feel, things that you might be going through. Um, Also pay attention to just daily life, right? Like, are there certain things that are happening to the people around you, or things you see on the news, or the weather? We were talking about the weather earlier. Like, is there a song that's kind of hiding in there? Also, books. Sometimes book titles can make good song titles. Sometimes sentences you see in books, or situations you see in books, could become interesting songs. Movies and TV shows. I get a lot. Oh, Ellie, do you have a question?
Yes, per the books referencing where to find ideas, wouldn't that be kind of copyright infringement?
Um, no, not if you're just taking little phrases that are not stealing the whole concept.
Oh,
Like, there might be phrases that just stand out to you. Like, maybe it says something about, I don't know, like dancing rain, right? Like, that's a metaphor. Um, but maybe the book says dancing rain. You could use that little phrase because it's, nobody owns the words dancing rain. Um, but if you took that whole sentence, then you might run into that. But
oh,
it's more like the ideas, but titles cannot be copywritten. So if you have a title, or if another song has a title, there's nothing that says you can't use that title. I mean, there's a million songs called Love,
yeah.
or I Love You, those types of things. Um, so yeah.
Thank you.
Movies and TV shows, a lot of times dialogue, things that people say, can have good ideas. A lot of times I'll watch TV with the closed captioning on because it makes my mind think about the dialogue as written word, which can sometimes spark more lyrical ideas. Other songs can sometimes inspire ideas. What if you took a song and you wrote the opposite of it? Like, maybe there's a song called I Miss You, and then maybe the song you write is from the other person's point of view, like, I know you miss me, but I don't care, right? Maybe that's a new song idea. Also, we kind of talked about this with personal experience, but I think personal feelings, like really capturing emotions that you feel, the way that we connect to each other as humans is through emotion. So the songs that really connect the most are the songs that are communicating a universal emotion. So really being able to tap into that, and understanding that if you feel strongly about something, there's probably someone else that's feeling strongly about that, or could be feeling strongly about that as well. So Other brainstorming techniques that I wanted to share. One is just free writing. So whatever comes to mind, if you just like put pen to paper and maybe you're not thinking of anything, just write, I can't think of anything. My mind is blank. And then all of a sudden your brain will start to come up with other ideas like, oh, look, the sun just came out, or I need to dust, or I need to vacuum. Like just free write whatever comes to mind. Also, letter writing. A lot of times in songs, we're saying things that we would never say directly to someone or about someone, or we may not tell anyone what we're feeling. So write a letter to either yourself or to someone else. And that can give you a lot of inspiration and a lot of content that you can use in songs as well. Also do sense-based writing. So in our last workshop, we did sense-based writing where you take an object and then you write about it from your senses. So you write, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? How does it move? Those types of things. Some of you are more familiar with that. Also, just go throughout your day listening and paying attention to things that feel like song titles, right? Like if there's any things you hear, if people say catchphrases, especially if you listen to country music, a lot of country songs really are good about catching sort of the phrases that people say and then turning them into songs. And then just keep a hook book. Write down any ideas that you might have. So I have actual notebooks. I have notes on my phone. I have Google Docs. I have tons of places where I capture ideas. And then again, pay attention to how people talk to each other. There's a lot of song material when you start to pay attention to the way that we speak to each other. Natalie, I see that you had your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Thank you. I was just you
Oh, I think you're breaking up, Natalie. We can't hear you.
Okay. I can maybe type it in the chat.
Yeah, go for it. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Awesome. So while she's typing, we'll keep going. So now I want to talk about what creates songs, or what are the building blocks. So we talked about the elements. Let's talk about lyrics. So when we're talking about lyrics, the first thing that starts to build a lyric is a syllable. So a syllable is the smallest part of a word or the way that we speak. So it's usually a combination of 1 to 2 letters. Usually there's a vowel and a consonant, but sometimes there's just a vowel. But syllables work together to create words. Words create lines, and then lines create your sections, and then sections go together to create songs. So when you're thinking about writing and capturing structure within lyric writing and within songwriting, thinking about all of these things down to the syllable, down to the word, down to the lines, the sections, is something that sometimes takes a while to work up to, especially if you're newer to songwriting. But just know that all of these work together and they build upon each other to create a song. So when we talk about sections,
On
did
that
somebody have a
last,
question?
on that last, I don't know how to raise my hand on this thing. So,
Sure.
the part about syllables, is that where you would think about rhymes and how to rhyme things or whether to?
You can. So like syllable wise, like if you look at the word building, right? We have building blocks. So you have building is 2 syllables, blocks is 1 syllable. And then you have a stressed syllable pattern. So you have building, which is strong, weak, and then blocks is strong. So you have dum to dum. So strong, weak, strong, building blocks. So where that comes into play is sometimes with rhyme, because a lot of times people will say, well, I want to rhyme building. So they all of a sudden they go to the ing sound. But rhyming an unstressed syllable isn't always effective because it doesn't have the same punch as when you rhyme a stress syllable. So words that rhyme stronger with building are the words that rhyme with the ill sound, the stress syllable. So build, so like building, shilling, killing, spilling, building, those are strong syllable rhymes. We're not rhyming, and even though the ing is rhyming, the rhyme is actually living in the stress syllable, if that makes sense. But that's getting really deep for foundational songwriting
Okay,
course.
that was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Natalie said, relating to the part about books and movies, how do you practice writing from another character's perspective in a way that feels truthful? Getting inside of the head. So I mean, I think that's the challenge, right? So I think that takes practice, but what I would do is just free write from their perspective. What would they say? What would they be feeling? Um, how does what other people say make them feel? Those types of things. So it takes practice, but that's what I would do. So next up, talking about common song sections. So songs, like we talked about, you have lines that become sections, and then sections become songs. So when we're talking about the most common song sections, there are verses, there are choruses, and then there's bridges. So verses are the parts of the song that set the scene and they tell the story. So your first verse is the very first time that your listener is going to hear any lyrical information. So a lot of times before they hear the words, there could be a musical intro that is already setting an emotion, right? So think of a live play or a live theater production, right? The curtain opens and you see the set and you see the lighting. So the set and the lighting are kind of like that music, right? And then the actors come out and they start telling us something. That's what your lyrics do in your verse. So your verse is setting the scene and it's telling what's happening. So a lot of times it's setting up a who, when, where, what is going on. And then your chorus is the emotional center and the main idea of the song and the reaction to the verses. So your verses job is to set up the chorus. So the verses give the emotional content in the chorus more of a concrete context. And where the idea of chorus came from is from ancient Greece. When they would do live performances, actors would perform a theatrical piece, and then a jury of singers would sing about it, and they would basically sort of respond to what they just saw. And that concept has carried over to popular music, where your verse is setting that scene, it's telling a story, and then the chorus is kind of saying, yeah, and this is the emotional summary of it. It's the main idea. It's kind of that thesis statement. And then a bridge, it's there to advance the story, but also more importantly is to give contrast. So contrast is this versus that. It's loud versus soft. It's long versus short. It's just anything that's not the same, right? And in songs, you want to build contrast so your listener doesn't get bored. So you want your verse to sound different than your chorus. You want your bridge to sound different than the other two sections. So there's a concept that you'll hear called the rule of two, even though there's no rules in songwriting, there's only tools. But the rule of two says if you do something twice, don't do it again until you do something else. So that's where the structure of songs come from. So a lot of times in songs, you will have a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus, and then a bridge, and then sometimes verse, chorus, right? So you're hearing two verses and two choruses, and then the bridge comes along and gives you something completely different. And then you can go back to the verse and the chorus afterward. So that's the concept of AABA. So you do something, you do it again, do something different, and then go back to it. So that's where some of the structure comes from. Usually in popular commercial music, song sections have about 4 to 6 lines. Sometimes they might have 3, sometimes they may have 2, sometimes they may have up to like 8 lines. 8 lines takes about 16 bars of music though, because usually a 4-stress line of lyric fits really well into 2 measures. So a lot of times a 4-line section works really well in an 8-bar section. So there's that. And then the common structures, we talked about AABA. So you might have a verse, refrain, bridge, verse, refrain. You may have a verse, chorus, verse, chorus, where it just alternates. You might have a verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. Some songs have what are called pre-choruses, which is like a kind of a ramp from your verse to the chorus. So it might go verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus. But these are kind of the most common structures, even though there are others that can work as well. Are there any questions on some of that we just covered, either the jobs of the sections or the structure of the sections? Natalie said, how do you gauge if a song needs a pre-chorus? Awesome question. So, couple things to look at is, does my verse sound a lot like my chorus? So if your verse sounds and feels a lot like your chorus, you might want to give a section in between that gives us a break. Because if it sounds too similar, your listener is going to tune out and you're going to lose them. So the second you start to make your listener think too hard and start to feel bored, they're going to be gone. So if there's not enough contrast, that's a reason to use it. Also, if content-wise, if you are reading your verse and going into your chorus and it doesn't quite seem to make sense, like maybe it doesn't have the right flow, it doesn't have the right continuity to it, that could mean you need to give us a little bit more information to ramp from the verse to the chorus. So the verse giving you that concrete kind of sense-based details, more of the very like setting the scene. And your chorus then is really emotional, but sometimes you might find that there's a jump between the scene and the emotion. So you need to give the listener a little bit more information. So that's a good time to try a pre-chorus as well. Great question. Any other questions? Cool.
Yes, I do. I have a
Oh,
question. Where
yeah,
does
go ahead, Tom.
where does the concept of middle 8 and what is the middle 8 and how does it fit into this structure?
Middle 8 is a bridge.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So now let's talk about rhyme schemes. So when we're talking about 4-line sections, rhyme schemes talk about the pattern of end rhymes. So like if you had Mary had a little lamb, fleece was white as snow, everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go, right? That's an XA rhyme scheme because your first and third lines do not rhyme. You have lamb and went, and then you have snow and go. So it's an XA pattern. common rhyme schemes that you can use, and it's a great place to start, is the ABAB. So it's the first and third lines rhyme, and then the second and fourth lines rhyme. And then you also have couplets where you have lines going AABB. So they're 2 lines rhyme, and then the next 2 lines rhyme. And then you can also have where all of the lines rhyme. Those are common schemes. Obviously, you can have any combination you want, but this is a good place to start, especially if you're newer to writing songs. And I think you'll see that a lot of really popular songs are based on these common rhyme schemes.
Chad,
Elliot, yeah.
of those common rhyme schemes, which is the most common of the common?
I don't know.
For your viewpoint.
I don't know for sure. That'd be a good question to Google or ask Chat GPT.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I don't know for sure what would be the most common. I would say that ABAB and AABB like show up a lot in going back to poetry, but also going back to like nursery rhymes and things too. Like those are some very simple songs, but they're made so children can remember them, but they also are super catchy. So a lot of what we do in music is all about catching our listener, and all of us grow up hearing certain things. So these foundational things stick, right? So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So now I want to talk about rhythm structures. So when we're talking about, we talked about common rhyme schemes, there's also common rhythm structures. So the first one is what I would call like the couplet structure. So this is kind of like the eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe, right? So it's dum da dum da dum da dum, dum da dum da dum da dum. Each 2 lines resolves. So you have this, what we would call fragmented structure, where these 2 lines feel like they rhyme, and then these 2 lines feel like they rhyme because they have a similar rhythm. They don't have to, but our sort of ingrained expectation is that they would. So that's couplets. Then you also have what's called common meter. And common meter is where you have a 4 stress line followed by a 3 stress line, then a 4 stress line, and then a 3 stress line. So these lines all have 4 stress syllables. So that is a tetrameter line. So when you have tetrameter structure, that means there's 4 stressed beats or 4 stressed syllables. So when you read dum da dum da dum da dum, you clap your hands 4 times, right? And each of those lines has 4 stresses. Common meter is Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. Everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. So it resolves at the end. But because you have lines that are not matching each other, it creates the sense of forward motion. So it feels like the structure moves forward. Any questions on that? That's getting kind of deep, but I wanted to give you these structures because there's a million songs that are written in these exact structures, because I hear a lot of people wanting to sort of reinvent structure when the idea is like, you don't have to reinvent a picture frame to create a really cool painting, right? Like you're not designing a frame, you're designing what's in it. So using structure that works can help you be more successful faster when you're in your songwriting. Any questions there? Cool. And I know Kevin went through this with me. So Kevin, is this bringing back memories?
This is the hardest part for me. I sometimes sing to this. I use my words and I structure them to the rhythm instead of having words to the rhythm. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but this is where I'm the most confused, Chad. This is where I have problems. But you're bringing back a lot of great stuff, which I really need.
Cool. Awesome. So those are common structures. Um, so when we're talking about rhythm, again, we are talking about half of a melody. So your lyrics are content and rhythm, whereas your melody is rhythm and pitch. So once you have your lyrics written, and Dominique, your friend who writes lyrics first, what she's really doing is building from the lyrical rhythm and then applying pitches to it, right? So it's kind of like backwards working from a rhythm to words. She's going from words to pitches, if that makes sense. So melody being a series of pitches and rhythm, where do you find melody then? So you find the melody in the rhythm in the lyrics. You can also find the pitches in scales. So just learning different keys, learning different scales. There's the pentatonic scale, which is used very commonly. That's a 5-note scale of the 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Within any major key, you can use the pentatonic scale. Also, if you're coming up with chords, some of you might be doing the hum and strum method where you have your guitar or your instrument and you're playing chords and then you're singing over it. Those melody notes then are coming out of what you're hearing in the chord tones. So you can use those chords to figure out, well, where can I go melodically? And once you know some notes, and if you have some lyrics, you can take that rhythm and apply those notes to it and start creating your melody. Also, like mumble singing, where you're just kind of singing nonsense and fitting it to a rhythm and kind of fitting it to a groove or fitting it to a chord progression. That's a great way to come up with it. Just ad-libbing and singing whatever. Maybe you're singing, maybe you have a title and you just start singing that title over your chords. That's a great way to start writing. So that's sort of where melody lives, right? Or that's where you can start getting the seeds of melody. So that's a good place there. Next up, I want to start, and we're kind of going through this a little bit fast, but we're just covering the basics tonight. And I have a lot of other videos on the YouTube channel at athomesongwriting.com that has deeper stuff. And then we also can talk more coming up. But now let's talk about chords. So in any major key, some people are like, well, I don't know what chords I should use, or I don't know where to start. So in a major key, there's really 4 what I would call the songwriter chords, right? These are chords that they just work. They're used in tons of songs. They are effective. They're simple. People already know them. It's easy to fit new content on them. And the 4 chords in any major key are the 1, so the root chord, the 4, the 5, and then also the 6, which is a minor chord. So you have 3 major chords and a minor chord. And what I did here was I broke out popular key signatures. So in the key of C, your 1, 4, 5, and 6 are the C, F, G, and A minor. In the key of G, it's G, C, D, E minor. In the key of D, it's D, G, A, B minor. And then in E, it's E, A, B, C sharp minor. So those are the songwriting chords, or the common chords.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So you've got 1, 4, 5, 6 there. Are you suggesting that they must be in that order, or just that those are the chords used?
For right now, we're just saying these are the chords that you can use, but you can put them in any order, actually, and they will work in almost any order. And if you take those chords and play them in different orders, you will all of a sudden it'll sound like a song, right? Because it will have, so common chord progressions are like the 1, 5, 6, 4. Taylor Swift has had, I think, 21 hit songs that use the 1-5-6-4 chord progression. All of the songs sound completely different because the melodies and the lyrics are all completely different, but the chord colors are the same. You also have the 1-6-4-5 or the 1-4-5-1, the 6-4-1-5, and the 1-5-4-1. And then there's other combinations, but these are kind of the most common that you see. And if you play through them on your instrument, you'll see that they sound like songs. And the way that you play them can vary, right? So this is just the order. Some people will play each chord, one chord per measure. Some people might play two chords per measure. Some people might play one chord for every two measures. Sometimes you might play a chord for just a beat, so you can decide how you play them, but the order is effective, because those are, just the way that the theory works. So any questions on chords? And you don't even have to go deep into music theory, just use these chords. The other thing that I should tell you is nobody owns chord progressions. So if you like a song and you like the feel of it, you can take the chord progression. They don't own the chord progression. So a great way to learn your chord vocabulary is to learn the chord progressions of other songs. And that's how I learned a lot. Elliot.
Just making sure I understand this correctly. The 1 is the bass tone in a key, and the 5 is the fifth tone, 6 tone, fourth.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions on this part? And Susan, sorry to hear that your phone's running out of charge. Hopefully you can stay a little while. All right. So the next thing, that's kind of what I had prepared of the prepared part of it, but I did want to remind you about my website at athomesongwritingcourses.com. So I have past workshops that are in the online community. It's totally free, so you can watch past workshops. I also do one-on-one coaching sessions. There is a fee for that. I do have a premium writer group for those of you who want to kind of get together on a weekly basis and do writing exercises and focus on really trying to write like a professional at home. And then there's also some online songwriting courses that I have as well. They go from free and up. So all budgets free on. And yeah, so that's what I have for everybody else. Are there topics that you want me to cover or questions that you have in your own writing that we can discuss as a group?
I just want to ask before I have to leave, can you please repeat your website again?
Oh, yeah. So it's athomesongwritingcourses.com. And I'll pull it up on the top. Yep.
Thank you very much. I know I should have charged my phone wrong, but that's not before rather. But that's not the only thing that's wrong. It's overheating. So
Oh no.
I have to start. I have a new phone that came in the mail today. So I just have to, get everything off this old phone onto the new phone, and then I'll be good to go. But
Awesome.
Thank you again for everything, and it was nice to be here with everybody. Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Susan. Hopefully you can join again.
I hope so. I was with you years ago, but I know you have a lot of people come and go.
I thought you looked familiar.
And I look a little different now than I did then too, so that could be why.
Well, it's good to see you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Chad, I have a question. If you'd like to talk about rhymes, what is an inside rhyme?
Like an internal rhyme or an inside rhyme? So that's a rhyme that happens not at the end of a line, but it happens in the middle of a line.
Okay.
So like hickory dickory dock, right? Like hickory dickory is an internal rhyme. So So it's happening
Well,
not at the
an
end.
internal rhyme is contained within one line then.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, and rhyme is, a lot of people think, well, songs is just all I have to do is write and then I just have to rhyme. And a lot of the other pieces to it matter more than the rhyme does, because sometimes we make content decisions based on a rhyme that really ruins our song. And what I mean by that is you pick a line only because it rhymes, and it makes it cheesy, right? So being able to learn how to say what you want to say, sometimes without rhyming, or maybe using a different type of rhyme, is a key there too. So you have about 5 different types of rhyme that you can use, and each of those has a different level of resolution, where a lot of times we're used to full resolution, which is a perfect rhyme, which doesn't always fit with what you're trying to say. A perfect rhyme is like way and stay, or heart and start. It has the same, they start different, they have the same vowel, and then they end with the same consonant. So it's a complete resolve. It's like going to the root note of a scale. Any other questions or thoughts? Hopefully this is helpful.
I have.
Oh, you're on mute, Tom.
I have one more, but I don't want to be a hog.
It's okay. Your questions might be helpful for others.
Okay. What do you do when all you have is a hook?
Yeah, great question.
A lyrical hook.
So is your lyrical hook a title, do you think? Is it the central part of a song, or you don't know?
I think it's a central part of the song.
So then you have to ask yourself, you can use the 5 W's, right? Like who is it happening to? And who is the singer? And what does that hook mean to the singer, right? Like, why is the singer saying this?
Mm-hmm.
Who are they saying it to? Where is it happening? When is it happening? What is happening? How did we get here? Where do we go from here? Ask questions like that about your topic, and you'll start to piece together a story, right? It'll start to tell you, how did we get here? What led to this? Why does this matter? And then you can figure out what to put in each verse, right? Sometimes your first verse might be talking about the past, your second verse talks about the present, and then like your bridge might talk about the future, right? So you might move through time. So you move through what we would call a when.
Mm-hmm.
Your song also might change location. So you go through a where. And then your song also can advance through the who. So sometimes a song will start off with the first verse is from the other person's perspective, like a you, me, us. So you might start with you, the singer, is talking about another person in the first verse. Then you have your chorus. Second verse then is how is this situation affecting me? Then the chorus again, and then the bridge is how is it affecting us as a collective? So how is it affecting the us? So you're going from you, me, us. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So when you have your hook, you're really trying to figure out where how did we get here? What's the story? You can also, when you're talking about a hook has a lot of information. It not only has lyrical information, but it also has rhythm, right? So whatever your title is, there's a rhythm pattern there. So once you have a rhythm pattern, you can determine, do I repeat it or do I do something different? So you could create a melodic pattern within a chorus from your hook, and then that would tell you what not to do in your verse, right? Because the idea is to contrast it. So whatever you have in your chorus, you want to do something different in your verse. So you build where you start, and just because you think of something first doesn't mean it has to be first in the song. So you don't have to write songs in the order that they're sung. Good question. Awesome. Anybody have anything else? Oh, Pierre, you had your hand raised.
Well, I think you can all tell Chad's very knowledgeable. I've been with the at-home songwriting community, I think pretty close to the right when you started it, Chad. Is that how many years you've been doing it? Two.
It's 3 years. I started in 2021, so yeah.
There you go. So for anyone who's serious about just wanting to learn in a really cool environment, like I say, you can see a little snippet tonight, but I've got to endorse Chad because he gives freely of his time to do this because he's passionate about it. And I came tonight, sure, I've written a few songs and, and gone through a few challenge things with Chad through the community, but you can always learn something new. So, like I say, it's a small group tonight, but if you're beginners now, and like I said, I go in tonight with a beginner's mind. We're in very good hands with Chad. So I just want to just give you an endorsement, because tonight, like I said, I had an open evening, and I said, you know what, why not go back to the basics? So thanks for what you do,
Awesome.
and like I say, anyone else who's on board, just stay posted, get on the community because it's a beautiful thing to express your feelings and thoughts through songs. So thanks, Chad.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Pierre. I appreciate that. Um, and the other thing too is the foundations. Like Pierre, I love that you came, even though that you've been doing this a little bit longer, like this foundational stuff never changes, right? Like sometimes I have to remind myself when I start overthinking, like just take it down to the basics and like what am I trying to do? And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think that's one of the things that we as songwriters think is we have to be completely original and you don't have to be completely original. You just need to be unique and authentic, right? So write things from your perspective and say things in a way that is not over like said a million times before, right? Like think about how many songs have been written about love, right? And people still find a way to write something that will knock your socks off. After how many millions and billions of songs there are, somebody can still write something, right? Like I think that's magic. And sometimes when you're writing, it feels like everything's been done before, or I don't know what I'm gonna write about, or nobody wants to hear this, but it's mind games that we play with each other. So, and the other thing is, some of you are familiar with Pat Pattison, but Pat is a professor at Berklee, where I teach, and Pat says 90% of what you write is not your best 10%. And he said, no matter who you are, if you're Shakespeare, if you're Bob Dylan, if you're whoever you want to, Carole King, 90% of what you write is not your best 10%. So if you want better 10%, you have to write more 90%. And that always inspires me because that just means the more you write, the more chance you have that it's going to come out really cool. So yeah. Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for oh, Natalie said what was the name of the book that Pat wrote? He's written a few, but the most popular one is Writing Better Lyrics. And that's a good one. I suggest people get it. It's a little bit, it's not a book you just sit down and read. It's a book you sit down and sort of do. And it's also a book that you go back to in little chunks because it gets a little heady because Pat's very much academic. Kevin took my course at Berklee, so Kevin, you know how Pat goes, right? um, but yeah, good book to get for sure. Awesome. Well, Natalie, thanks for staying up. I think you're the one that's up the latest here, so that's good.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. I really appreciate it so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Next thing I have coming up is this Saturday. I'm going to be going live on YouTube with Doyle Turner, who's one of my friends. I've had him on before. He has another album that he's releasing, and I just love kind of talking to him about his music because he started a few years ago just kind of being a total newbie. I think he played guitar and he just was like, I'm going to start writing songs. And now I think he's on like, this is 3 or 4 albums, and he tours around, he does shows, he does, a lot of music stuff, and he's still a teacher too. So he has a day job. So, it is possible to to do music stuff out there. So hopefully you can join that as well. And this will be posted in the online community at athomesongwritingcourses.com as well. So if you want to download it and watch it again, you'll be able to. Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Oh, did you have your hand raised, Natalie?
I did, but I don't know if my microphone's working now. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you now. Yep.
Okay. How do you, my keyboard's a little bit broken, so that's why I was kind of limiting my questions. How do you get good at practicing like writing for your voice? Because I've noticed like certain songwriters like Olivia Rodrigo, I always feel like she's so good at showcasing her voice and getting to the like emotion of the song and marrying the two. And I was just wondering if you had like any tips for that.
Yeah. Great question. So to write a great song, you don't have to have a great voice, right? Because look at Bob Dylan. Some people might argue that Dylan's voice is fine, right? But I think you have to sort of grow where you're planted kind of a thing, where you have to kind of understand what you can do with your voice. And not everybody's Celine Dion or Mariah Carey, right? Like not everybody can sing a huge range. So you have to then focus on the other aspects of the song, right? So you have to focus on rhythm. You have to focus on how does the melody carry the lyrics from a rhythmic perspective, but then also how does that dance off of the chords? But I would say that for me personally is sometimes I can't sing the things that I actually hear. So like sometimes I would need to have somebody else sing my song. But I think as a singer-songwriter, I think over time you just sort of learn like what keys work for you. Um, Dana Baker, who's a member of the group, she's a vocal coach and a vocal producer in Nashville. She did a whole workshop on this that's on the YouTube channel. And she talks about how do you find like the key for your voice and like how do you do that? Yeah, I think, being able to practice voice, I think doesn't hurt a songwriter, right? So if you can do vocal exercises, if you can warm up, I think that's good. As far as like finding out, like to me, when I hear you say like, well, how does Olivia Rodrigo know where to write her song? I think she knows what keys she can sort of do what she does in. And don't try to be Olivia Rodrigo because you might have your own voice, right? And it's kind of futile to try to be somebody else. Same with songwriting. Like comparison can be the thief of joy, right? Like you try to compare yourself to others. But at the same time, learn through the tools that they're using. So there are times where you do want to pay attention to like, oh, what is Olivia doing in that song? What is she doing rhythmically? What is she doing with the pitch? Like what is she doing with the chords, those types of things? Is that helpful? I feel like I just went around the block like 3 times and we didn't stop.
That's super helpful. Thank
Okay.
you. That's amazing. Thank you.
Awesome. Great questions tonight. I love this.
Chad,
Yeah.
Dana Baker's name is spelled Dayna or Dan?
Dana.
Oh.
And then Baker, just like a baker.
Baker.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Oh, did you raise your hand again, Natalie?
I did. I'm really sorry. Can I
No,
ask
it's
one more
okay.
question?
Yeah. We're just talking.
What's like as a songwriter, because I've mostly practiced from my very new songwriting journey, writing pop so far. What's the difference in differentiating how to write pop from how to write musical theatre?
Yeah. I think that's a good question because I haven't studied musical theater as much, but I think there are some stylistic differences, just like there's stylistic differences between country and pop. But with musical theater, you are writing a song that's part of a larger collection of songs. So you're kind of writing one piece of the puzzle right? Whereas when you're writing a pop song, you're kind of writing the whole puzzle and you're telling one story. Whereas like a musical theater song is one part of a story, and the song itself doesn't always have to establish what's happening. It just has to explain what the characters are saying, right? So it's a little bit different, because you actually do have lights and actors and other things that are happening to tell the story. Whereas like just a pop song or just a singer-songwriter song, all you have is the words and the music. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Last call. Any other questions before we wrap up? Awesome. Well, everybody, it was great to see you. Hopefully I'll see you at future workshops, and definitely join the community if you haven't already, and reach out if you need anything. And it's great to see all of you.
Great.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.